Hi guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic. How do you develop an M&D training capacity building plan? Okay, so now for those of you who may not know this, but every organization around the world has certain skills that they are lacking. Okay, it can happen to any organization. So because of those skills that you're lacking to actually undertake M&D activities, you need to capacity build your staff. So this is what we're going to be talking about. If you're here for the very first time and you're just getting to know me, I want to tell you a bit about myself. My name is Coach Alexander. I have 10 years experience in monitoring and evaluation. So welcome to this YouTube channel. Please do so by subscribing to this channel so that you get all the latest updates in relation to M&D. Another thing which I really hold dear to my heart is the one-on-one coaching program. Okay, I want to encourage any of you out there to enroll in this. You can write to me. It's a very good program. You get one-on-one coaching on how to become an effective M&D professional. Okay, I'm sure you see that logo at the far left. I have to tell you this, for those of you who don't know, we're actually launching an institution very soon that's going to be specifically training people to become better at M&E. Okay, so this is a vision that we have, and this is where we're heading to. I'll talk about that in a few weeks, okay, especially when we launch the website. So this video is quite long, so please do well to use the timestamps. The timestamps help you navigate your way throughout a long video. So if you don't want to watch everything, you just go to the part of the video which is most relevant to you. It makes the viewing experience much easier. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into business. What is capacity building? You know, I have to tell you guys, I've attended a lot of meetings in my over 10 years of work, and I hear this word used a lot, okay? But essentially, what it really means is, imparting skills into an individual or an organization, okay? So the whole issue is that you want somebody to become better, or you want an organization to become better in terms of what they have in terms of the skills, okay? I'm going to talk about this more in the slides that follow. So the importance of building capacity, you know, for example, some organizations have M&D professionals. It's true. Okay, many organizations actually have M&D professionals on board. But you might notice that some of them lack certain skills, okay? They lack skills in report writing. It could be they lack skills in analyzing data. But these are actually M&E with M&D professionals with qualifications. So it's not a bad thing to know that somebody lacks a certain competence, because now that is an opportunity to help them improve. So the importance of building capacity, it really enables an organization and their leaders to develop competences and skills that can make them more effective and sustainable, thus increasing the potential for charitable to enrich lives and solve society's most interactable problems. So this is at this importance you see there is at the angle of non-profit organizations, which I know most of you who are watching these videos, you work for them, and it's easy to connect with this slide. However, we must also appreciate that it's, you know, M&D is not just non-profit. It's not found only in the non-profit organizations. It is found everywhere, and I have to mention that M&E is everywhere. even in the profit-making organizations. It's only that they haven't really adopted it the way the non-profit organizations have. So now, this image you see in front of you is how the capacity building plan is actually developed and operationalized. So the first step, actually, if you look at those slides, if you look at the arrow and those boxes, it's actually giving you the steps of how you implement capacity building in an organization. So the first most important step is to assess the need. You don't just, and I hope managers or coordinators of projects are actually listening to me, because I see this sometimes a problem with our bosses, or even anyone who's taking the lead. They tend to think that you just need to have a capacity building workshop or some training because it's appearing in the budget. Okay, fine. You might look at it as a continuous professional development activity. But I have to mention that the most effective way to identify needs of an organization is to undertake a needs assessment. So after you identify that indeed there is a need for building capacity in relation to M&E, the next thing is to develop the strategy. So in this presentation, you'll notice that I don't use the word strategy, I use the word plan, but they all mean the same thing, because a strategy is a plan. So you develop the strategy, you implement the strategy, you monitor to see whether it's actually working. If it's not working, then you need to revise the strategy. You report on performance, okay? So you can see that there's actually a cycle that is taking place, okay? And that's what monitoring and evaluation does. So now there are different areas of capacity building, okay? You might notice that for example, if you are a manager or a coordinator, you might get frustrated with your staff because they lack certain areas to do the job to the best of your satisfaction, such as the development of M&D tools. You might notice they are not doing a good job. Development of M&D plans, you're frustrated, you're not happy with the way they are doing it. Strategic planning process, conducting a data quality audit, or even doing trainings, you're just not happy. So those are areas of capacity building. And I've seen this a lot, that sometimes even the tools that are being developed by some of our staff leave much to be desired. And it's not a bad thing. When there is a weakness, it's an opportunity to improve. So you must look at this as an opportunity to improve where you've seen a weakness. So what is a capacity building training plan? So it is essentially a schedule of M&D trainings that you desire to conduct on staff within an organization. So this is a very, very basic definition, okay? I'm just trying to make it simplified. But like you saw in the earlier slide, it's actually a strategy. Where do you want your team to be in terms of skill sets, and competences? Because when you have that clearly outlined, you work towards it. So the plan itself is going to tell you, first of all, what are the areas of weaknesses in terms of the the capacity in the organization? What are the areas of weaknesses? And I want to mention also, this is something I just forgot to mention. The capacity, you hear people mention capacity. We don't have the capacity to do this. Okay? Sometimes capacity is interchangeably used with numbers. Okay? So when someone says we don't have the capacity to implement this project, they don't just mean in terms of the knowledge and skills, but they are probably also talking about the numbers. We don't have enough numbers. Okay, so that could also be part of the definition. But mainly, we're talking about the skills and competences. So now, how do you develop a capacity building plan? Okay, you might be asking yourself that question right now. So the first important thing is to develop, is to understand whether there is a gap, all right? And I can guarantee you there always is a gap. There always is a gap when it comes to these things. I'll give you another example. You might have the best staff, M&D staff, in your organization. Okay, you might have the best M&D staff. Now, what happens is that your organization brings in a web-based M&D system. It so happens that once they introduce this web-based M&D system, the staff, the best M&D staff, are not well skilled when it comes to use of computer technology. So you discover actually that's a gap in itself. You want to use a web-based system, but the staff you have they just don't have that technical knowledge on how to use a web-based system. So that's an area you need to work on. You need to come up with a plan that will capacitate these staff in the use of such technology. So the skills gap, you identify it through a needs assessment. The needs assessment is the starting point. And in case you've never done a needs assessment before, if you are a researcher, you don't even need to be taught how to do a needs assessment. Okay, if you did research methodology at the university or at college, believe you me, you don't need to be a magician to know how to do it, because what you're just trying to do is to use empirical evidence to establish whether people actually know what they are doing. So you're going to ask questions to staff members. You do it in a tactful way. You ask them, are you familiar with the use of questionnaires? Are you familiar with the use of these data collection tools? Can I see some of the things you've done? Can you mention the challenges? And it is through your interaction with different staff members. You generate a report, you use empirical evidence, you come up with tables, you come up with graphs, and you draw your conclusion. You say, based on these findings, it looks like there's a need in this area. You don't need to come up with a Bible of a report, no. Or, an encyclopedia probably. Sorry, I used the word Bible, no. I think that was, the best is encyclopedia. Okay, I wish this was live. I probably would ask questions from you, the viewers. Let's go straight to the next slide. Now, some common limitations. I talked about this, and this is common. If you have a challenge actually trying to identify a gap, these ones are mostly the common ones that pop up, having dealt with different organizations. One is the poor report writing skills. You know, there are some reports you read, M&D reports, you read them, but you can't really establish whether it has answered the questions that you asked at the onset. Because when it comes to M&D reporting, everyone listen to me when I talk about this, those who are listening today. The thing about M&D reporting is that you should focus on communicating whether the project is achieving its goals or not. And if it's not achieving, you need to explain why. Unfortunately, what I've seen is that some of these reports, yes, they are done by academicians, but when you read through it, you're left guessing. So that's a capacity issue, because what use is a report if you can't understand what it's saying? It has to tell you exactly whether this project is achieving or it's not achieving, and it should be able to give recommendations. Some of the other limitations is the poor analytical skills that are exhibited, of course, in the reporting. So it's linked to the first. Another one is poor presentation skills. Okay. Unfortunately, the way our world is, I think this is actually, it can be fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which angle you look at it. But I'll say fortunately. The thing is that if you go to an audience, you're presenting your M&D findings, you need to make your presentation captivating, okay? And if you've noticed, my presentations are, anyway, based on the feedback I've received, I mean, they're good, right? You have pictures, sometimes I've used animations, sometimes I've used infographics. That's how it should be done. Another reporting, maybe I would mention this, I like the way the UN reports its sustainable development goals. That's another way you can do your M&D reporting. Go to the internet right now, look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals report. See how they report their findings on the progress of all those SDGs. Very good reporting style. So you find that sometimes this can be a problem. Low knowledge levels in M&D ethics. This is another capacity building need that I've seen. When we talk of ethics, what are we talking about? How do you behave when in relation to your conduct? When you're doing these M&D activities, how should your conduct be? Communication skills. Are you a good communicator? Okay. I was communicating with someone today, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. Sorry, I brought that up. Let's go further now. Okay, so the Monitoring and Evaluation Academy of Excellence, the one I talked about earlier on, and I'll talk about this further, actually is an institution that helps with capacity building in M&D by conducting needs assessment. So in case you want to inquire further on this, in case you have an organization, as an organization, you need capacity building, you can get in touch with me. I'll be able to help you sort that problem out. Now let's continue. So the steps are, first, step 1, you do the needs assessment. Step 2, write up a needs assessment report. Step 3, have that needs assessment, the findings validated by staff or stakeholders. So let me pause there for 1 minute. You know, when you have this report done, with the tendency we have is to submit it to management, and management approves or disapproves it. But because this is something that affects the whole organization, you need to have it validated by the people that you were actually interacting with. So you can have a meeting as an organization, sit down, communicate the findings, and ask the staff members whether they actually agree or disagree, and you try to find out why. Okay? So that there is that ownership with everyone. Then the next thing is the identification of a trainer to do the actual capacity building. Then development of the M&D capacity building plan. And finally, implementation. Now let me touch further on the identification of a trainer. The beauty about this whole thing is that the trainer doesn't always need to be an external person, although that could be more desirable, but can prove expensive sometimes. If your organization has somebody who's skilled at doing certain things in relation to M&D, he can actually pass on that skills to other staff members. It usually works well when the person who's skilled in M&E and has that experience, more experience than the others, it usually works well and easily if they adopt that same person to actually build capacity. Okay, so now the capacity building plan. There's obviously a template that you can use. The cover page, of course, is essential. Table of contents, executive summary, introduction, background, objectives, and the capacity building plan itself. So what we are saying here is the planned activities. In every plan, get this from me, for as long as you are calling that document a plan, it has to have a budget. Because the question I have for people who don't put a budget in their plan is, then how are you going to finance whatever you want to do? Let everybody know from the start that this is what is required in terms of the budget, because you can't do anything without money. Now the matrix, and I think in the coming weeks or probably next week, I'll give you just a idea of how the capacity building plan matrix can look like. But what we are saying here is that you simply just need to list all the activities to be conducted, list the target audience for this training, list the budgetary allocation, list the topics that need to be conducted, and list the assessment methodology that is going to be used. So the assessment methodology, when you do any training, you must always remember to assess your people that you've trained so that you can be able to gauge whether they have understood the material or not. So you need to, if you are going to use a test at the end of the training, include it in the matrix. Okay, so that was the last slide. So please, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to write to me. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation as we start the year 2022. I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side.